well, maybe the buildings just fell, and you've got iron oxide, which is rust, I agree, and aluminum in the buildings, and they come together and form nanothermite. My question is, yeah, well, where does all the organic material come from, and how do you get these all formed intimately combined in this mixture, and to get it to react rapidly as it does? In this plot, which is described in more detail in our paper, the blue curve shows the reaction of the red material from the World Trade Center. We did this with from all 4 samples. This is one of the samples. Notice that it goes to a high peak there in watts per gram. The red peak is from known nanothermite. This is from a paper published by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, scientists there, which is just down the street, basically, here, not too far away. And this is a 2001 paper, meaning that they had worked on this, of course, for years prior to this. Both of these curves show a very high energy release in short times, and in fact, the red material from the World Trade Center, 7 years later, when we did the test, reacts more rapidly than known nanothermite. It's a very remarkable stuff. In the words of my colleague, Dr. Fair, it blows up. And this is from the World Trade Center dust, still blows up. Following the tests, these ignition tests in the DSC, we looked at the residue and we observed numerous iron-rich spheres, which Richard talked about, and so prevalent in the dust. Now, these spheres were not present in the red material prior to ignition, but following ignition, they are present. This means, it doesn't just suggest, it means that there were very high temperatures present. And furthermore, we find iron oxide beforehand. I'll show you data on that in a moment. And we find elemental iron, that is, not enough oxygen to produce iron oxide after ignition. That means the iron is reduced in chemical terms, which means there was a thermite reaction. No other way to reduce the iron and produce these spheres from this material as we have observed and published in a peer-reviewed paper. Now here's some new data. Here are some new data. Transmission electron microscope data showing in the circle one of our iron oxide grains. The scale here is 100 nanometers, lower left-hand corner. So these are indeed very ultra-fine grains. We then look at the TEM electron diffraction pattern for this grain that was circled, and we see a very clear diffraction pattern, the bright points that you see here. By analyzing the lattice structure that is denoted by this electron diffraction pattern, comparing with known elements. So here in this table, Dr. Fair is comparing the d-spacing in angstroms, second column, with the d-spacing in angstroms of iron oxide, Fe2O3. And we find a match, an exact match, showing that Fe2O3 is indeed a component of this red material from the World Trade Center dust, and these ultrafine grains. And by the way, no elemental iron was found. It is present after the reaction. That's what you expect from the thermitic reaction, the production of iron from iron oxide. What happens is that the oxygen associated with the iron oxide transfers over, is taken by the aluminum so that you form elemental iron. It's very vigorous reaction, of course. My last slide. This is our paper. Dr. Niels Harrit is first author, and he's doing a wonderful job of spreading the information about this science. This is a peer-reviewed paper in an established scientific journal. I want to emphasize that this paper has not yet been challenged in the literature, the peer-reviewed literature. In the protocol of science, the established protocol. We have published our findings. It took months to get this through peer review, I might say, but it has been published. And as David Griffin pointed out, it's receiving a great deal of attention in Europe. We're hoping, beginning with this conference, we'll get some attention in the media in the United States. Thank you.
Coming up in the next segment of this historic press conference, our special guest, citizen, activist, firefighter, and founder of Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, Eric Lawyer.
At this time, I would like to introduce to you a very special gentleman and friend of mine, a firefighter and paramedic of 22 years and founder of Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, claiming now 116 firefighters on the petition, Mr. Eric Lawyer.
Thank you very much. And like Richard said, my name is Eric Lawyer, and I founded the Firefighters for 9/11 Truth after I watched Richard in one of his presentations, and I realized that something more had to be done. And I just want to thank Richard for everything he's doing here, and the Firefighters for 9/11 Truth strongly support Richard Gage and all the architects and engineers that have the courage to sign that petition. And I know from personal experience there's about 5 times as many out there that believe what we believe but don't have the courage to sign it. So what I'm hoping today is that people will find the courage after listening to this presentation and seeing everybody here and seeing that we are behind it. We also demand an investigation that follows the national standards and has contempt and subpoena powers. 9/11 was the greatest loss of life and property damage in U.S. fire history. This should have been the most protected, preserved, over-tested, and thorough investigation of a crime scene in world history. Sadly, it was not. What was it? Well, we know from their own admission, the majority of the evidence was destroyed. Like Richard said, 22 years of experience, I've seen a lot of crime scenes. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I was out at the site. I saw trucks leaving faster than anywhere I've ever seen, but I accepted it at the time, and for years I accepted it because it was a recovery and rescue operation, and that's normal to have something like that going. Again, we'd never seen anything like it, but that was expected. What I didn't know for years, what was going on behind the scenes, was that evidence was being destroyed when it was shipped off. By their own admission, Tower 7 investigation, this investigation at Tower 7 had no physical evidence. How do you investigate a crime when you've destroyed all the evidence? It doesn't make sense. They also admit that they refused to test the explosives, or to test for explosives or residue of thermite. Now, this is what I'm going to go into here just real quickly, is there are national standards for an investigation. That's what all of us are asking for, an investigation that follows national standards and holds people accountable. This manual right here, just so you can see it, is what we call the kind of the Fire Investigation 101. This is the most basic fire investigation manual there. This is for the 2001 edition. This is what should have been referred to, at least. It doesn't have to be followed exactly, but it should have been used as a guideline for the investigation. I'm just going to cover a few of the things that are in here. So NIST violated, and the initial investigators that did not protect the scene violated the most basic of the guidelines. And I'm going to cover 5 of them here. One is the NFPA 9.3.6. It covers spoliation of evidence. Specifically what it reads is, once evidence has been removed from the scene, it should be maintained and not destroyed or altered until the investigation is complete. The steel was melted down prior to the investigation. We know that from their own admission. This is no conspiracy theory stuff. 19.2.4, exotic accelerants. If on the scene you find melted steel or concrete, you should consider the use of exotic accelerants. And they specifically say in the manual, thermite mixtures produce exceedingly hot fires that can account for melted steel and concrete. That also says they leave residues that can be tested for visually and chemically identifiable. Again, they did not test for it. And just put it in perspective, on a routine house fire, if we suspect even the slightest use of an accelerant, we're going to test for it when there's no fatalities, when there's very little property damage. So to not do it on this, there is absolutely no excuse. I can't drive that point home enough. 18.15 is analyze fuel source. All available fuel sources